stand for pledge allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we could all just please remain standing in honor of those men and women who sacrificed their lives for our great country. Thank you.
Here. Mr. Vitelli?
Here.
Mr. Nicholas?
Here.
Dr. Pascucci?
Here.
And Mayor Hines is absent this evening.
Okay. I know we have a citizen service. I understand. Captain Locko?
Yes.
Nada? You guys going to read this, or you want me to read this?
No, that's something different.
This is,
That's
okay, this is the, go ahead, guys.
Good evening, Township Committee, Chief, and residents. It gives me great pleasure this evening to come before you this evening to present this award to a very deserving young man, Dylan Lynch. Dylan is a senior at St. John Vianney High School in Homedale. On May 20th this year, the Homedale Police Department received a call of a small child, 2 to 3 years old, running around in the roadway on Line Road near Van Brackle. Patrols and first aid were immediately dispatched. At about the same time, 2:20 p.m., Dylan was leaving school, driving to his home in Freehold. While traveling on Line Road, Dylan saw a toddler running in the roadway towards oncoming traffic. Line Road is a heavily traveled road, especially at St. John's dismissal. And for anyone who's ever traveled that roadway, you know there are hills and a lot of sharp turns. Dylan immediately stopped his car and approached the toddler. Dylan was able to corral the child and keep him from possible serious injury or worse, God forbid. The police arrived shortly thereafter. The child's house was located a short distance away, and the child was ultimately returned to his family. While other vehicles did not stop for the toddler, Dylan saw the potential for a catastrophic incident and immediately took action. For his actions on that day, we are presenting Dylan with the Citizen Service Award. Congratulations, Dylan, and great job. Your family, parents, and your sisters come up also and join me, please.
Good. All right, so we have we have a proclamation that we're reading about Mental Illness Awareness Day, and a young student from Biotech High School, Sonia Jane. I believe she's in the audience this evening. Hi, Sonia. How are you? Come on up. You wrote to our mayor and you requested that this day be acknowledged and recognized by the Township Committee, and I thank you for that. And we have a resolution here prepared, and I will read it on behalf of the mayor and the Township Committee. That whereas mental health is part of an overall health, and whereas 1 in 5 adults experiences a mental health problem in any given year, and whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illnesses begin by the age of 14 and 3/4 by the age of 24, and whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death among young adults, and 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness. And whereas long delays, sometimes decades, often occur between the time of symptoms first appear and when individuals get help. Whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery. And whereas it is important to maintain mental health and learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed. Whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help. Whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now, therefore, be it resolved, Mayor Eric Hines, on behalf of the Township Committee, do hereby proclaim October 10th as Mental Illness Awareness Day to shine a light on mental illness and fight a stigma, provide support, educate the public, and advocate for equal care. Sonia, I applaud you, and we all do, and thank you very much. And I guess this is...
Can you just Thank you.
Can you just write it down?
All right. Okay. Green team, you're up.
Hello, I'm Betsy Wilson at 9 Valley Point Drive.
Yes.
I'm one of the members of your green team, along with Sabrina and Janet here. We're here tonight before the committee because we have a modest proposal that will help reduce single-use plastic pollution in our town. I've learned a couple of interesting things lately that I'd like to share with you. First has to do with our county. I telephoned the chief engineer at the Monmouth County Reclamation Center in Ten Falls and asked him how much room was left in our landfill. He said that we have 5 years left on the current landfill. They've applied to the state for permission to build a new one. A new one would last another 20 years. And after that, the county doesn't have any more land for building landfills. Next thing, my husband and I decided we would have a look at the roadsides in Holmdel and see what we could find. So we picked up a litter along South Holland Road and Holland Telegraph Hill roads over a period of about a week. Took 12 bags of litter home. I sorted through it and tallied it, and here's what I found. 129 plastic bottles, 63 plastic bags, 6 straws, and miscellaneous other stuff, which is either compostable or easily recyclable, like metal cans. So here we have it, right here in Holmdel, on 2 miles of our roads, 129 bottles and 63 bags. Next, I'd like to turn this over to Sabrina, who's going to say a little more about plastic pollution.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Conlon, and I too am a member of your green team. I wanted to thank the whole entire Township Committee for all your support in helping to reduce single-use plastics through your resolution in the past. And we're hopeful and excited that you're interested in considering an ordinance like many of the other local towns in our area. As we just heard from Betsy, plastic trash can be easily found along the roadsides in Homedale, and Monmouth County landfill is running out of space rapidly. Plastic pollution is indeed a global epidemic. According to the National Geographic, approximately 18 billion pounds of plastic end up in the ocean each year. Most of this has only been used once and then tossed. This is just the tip of the iceberg. In the United States, we dispose of 100 billion plastic bags per year, over 4 billion of which is from New Jersey. The average bag is used only 15 minutes, but lasts nearly forever. Our cities are literally throwing away millions of dollars in costs taking care of the plastic pollution problem, because plastic bags contaminate our recycling streams, they jam the recycling machines. It costs money to remove plastic bags from streets and sewers and parks. And it costs money to collect and dispose of plastic bags in our landfills. Our free plastic bags aren't really free, and they have immeasurable costs when you also weigh the damage to the animals, to the ocean, and to human health. Millions of plastic straws are used and tossed daily, and straws are one of the top 10 marine debris items found in beach cleanups. And styrofoam takeout containers and shipping materials contain the chemical styrene, which has been linked to cancer, vision, and hearing loss. The manufacturing of polystyrene is one of the largest creators of hazardous waste. And styrofoam is very difficult to recycle, and when incinerated, releases hazardous chemicals. So recycling plastic bags, styrofoam, and straws is largely costly and ineffective. Homedale can be very proud of our semi-annual styrofoam recycling that was spearheaded by Betsy Wilson and Victor Stevens. But unfortunately, once the styrofoam touches food, it will not be accepted for recycling. As you probably know, plastic does not biodegrade. It photodegrades, which means it never really goes away. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, which you've probably heard of, microplastics. Sadly, birds and fish mistake these tiny microplastics for food, and they eat them. Over 1 million animals, from turtles to seabirds to whales, die each year from ingesting or becoming entangled in our plastic trash. Plastics bioaccumulate in the food chain, and we're at the top of the food chain. We do not yet know exactly the effect on human health. Production of plastic has come at a breakneck pace. Virtually half of the plastic ever produced has been produced in the last 15 years. And globally, only 18% of plastic is being recycled. So recycling is only a small part of the answer. What we really need to do is reduce our single-use plastic use. And China banned almost all imports of plastics in January of 2018. They used to be the world's trash can. They no longer have the capacity to take our trash, our plastic waste. So that means massive quantities of plastic now don't know where to go. The United States is struggling with that as well. So unfortunately, recycling plastic is currently more expensive than producing new plastic, partially because China can't take our trash. Also, there's an overabundance of petroleum and just a huge overabundance of single-use plastics. According to the Homedale Township budget, we appropriated an additional $100,000 for the cost of recycling in 2019 as compared with 2018. So again, while recycling needs to be continued, it's more important than ever to reduce our single-use plastics. So where is all this plastic going now? A small amount is being recycled, as I said. Some is being stockpiled in hopes that the markets will open up someday. Some recyclers are getting waivers and sending it to the landfill, and some is being sent to incinerators, some of which are very old and not meant to handle the plastics. So additional hazardous chemicals are going into the air. Clearly, our plastic consumption is unsustainable, unhealthy, and expensive too. So we really cannot afford to continue to use billions of plastic bags each year, straws, and styrofoam takeout containers, because they waste taxpayer dollars, harmful to our environment, and harmful to human health. With that, I'll turn it over to Janet, who would like to talk about a practical solution for Homedale, an ordinance that many other towns near us have already adopted.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I'm Janet Jackal, 31 Stonewood Road. And like Betsy and Sabrina, I'm a member of the Green Team. As they have both told you, single-use plastics, and especially the plastic grocery bags, which we see blowing all over the place, creates serious damage to the environment and to our health. And we also have create economic burdens. We know that they show up in they're not recyclable, but they show up in recycling anyway. And I found out that our neighboring town, Middletown, reported that plastic bags are over 70% of the contamination of the recycling stream.
Janet, can you get a little closer to the
Oh,
mic?
terribly sorry. They're over 70% of the contamination of the recycling stream, and what that does is it creates damage to the whole process, it slows it down, costs money. So if you worry about the environment, your health, the costs, and we worry about all of them, of course, something obviously needs to be done. And the first thing I'd like to say is that Homedale has already taken steps which we really appreciate. There's the styrofoam recycling that Sabrina mentioned, and then there's been a reduction in the number of the plastic bottles that end up in the parks because the DPW has installed some water refill stations so that people use the refillable bottles instead of the ones that they toss. And I'd really like to thank Victor Stevens and Bob Ward who made that happen, put those things in. And I'd also like to thank those of you on the committee because you passed a resolution supporting our campaign to reduce single-use plastic. The trouble is the stuff is still piling up. And we'd like to...
What can we do to help?
What can you do to help? Right. We know recycling isn't going to do the job. It's a good thing to do, but it's just not sufficient, whether it's for bags, styrofoam,
Right.
or whatever. So a lot of towns nearby, and Sabrina made this lovely poster showing what some of those towns are, they've enacted ordinances. They're mostly to restrict single-use plastic. They typically, oh, my bag, thank you, my props. The things they are targeting, there's styrofoam, and then there's these heavy the heavier plastic bags that are used for carrying out groceries are the ones they target. They don't apply to the ones that you put the meat or the produce in because there's not an easy substitute for those. And they also don't apply to things like dry cleaning bags. But you can always substitute these lovely
Can hear you, Jen.
local.
In the mic.
Can hear you.
Sorry, there's a local reusable bags, they're paper bags, and so on. And the big thing is, you don't have to worry about how you dispose of something if you don't get it in the first place.
Did you forward us a sample resolution or a
Yes,
sample
we
something?
did, and in addition, I have copies if you'd like.
Can you just give it to our administrator, Chief Shimoniszewski? Copy of that? Thanks.
These are ordinances from Little Silver
Okay.
and from Fairhaven. So they're towns that are close to us and very similar kinds of demographics. And Red Bank has also put one into, it's not taken effect yet, but they have passed such an ordinance. So what we're hoping is that you will look at these ordinances and find a way to enact one that is suitable for Homedale itself. I think we'd all benefit, and the Green Team would be very happy to help you in any way we can.
I think it's wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time for coming here this evening and speaking on this. It's important, and I applaud your efforts.
If you have any questions,
you're for me. Does any of the members of it have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I just, just sign.
Oh, yeah.
Sign. Don't forget to sign.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's move personnel. What we have, that's an old one. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to move to personnel. So, Mike, you want to take it? Sure.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Deputy Mayor agreed to move up item number 11 on the agenda to handle here at the front end of the meeting, which is titled Personnel. The first item is a resolution authorizing entry into an employment agreement with John Matuszewski as Chief of Police. The recommendation would be to a motion to approve, incorporating minor amendments as discussed in executive session this evening.
Motion.
I'll second that.
Mr. Bontempo?
So the chief has been a valuable asset to the team since I asked him to take on the part-time temporary administrative position since April. So I wholeheartedly support the contract.
Yes. I concur with Mr. Kingdom. Are we your roll call vote?
No one called for a roll call.
Roll call, yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
100% yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Mr. Chief Matuszewski has been invaluable this summer and informing us and keeping the Township Committee informed on all matters going on in town, and we thank you.
All right. Sure, Deputy Mayor. The second item under personnel is a resolution appointing the township administrator. And again, this is a resolution where we would recommend adoption with the minor amendments as discussed in executive session.
So I will move to appoint the township administrator.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Any discussion?
Discussion?
So yeah, if I could, I just want to, people that aren't familiar, this process was engaged with a motion we made at a meeting a few weeks ago to hire a outside firm to help us with the sourcing of a new administrator. They received multiple resumes from candidates all over the state, and actually some from outside the state of New Jersey. We held interviews in executive session. We then drew finalists down, and we had them come in and meet with various department heads of the township, and then the members of the Township Committee then met with them again. This is the second process that I've personally been involved in hiring an administrator. So we did it 6-7 years ago. And again today, I can say with clarity and certainty that this is single-handedly the best candidate that we have ever interviewed, and I'm happy to second the motion to adopt this contract for her tonight.
Any other discussion? All right, so let's call for the vote, and then Joe Schron, I'd like to introduce you to the public. Let's do the vote first.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
I see Ms. Roundtree's in the audience, and I'm happy to see you again. I had a very pleasant interview with her probably 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago. My issue is the second round of interviews. My fellow committeemen did not respect my request and the mayor's request to reschedule the date because we weren't available on that day. So my apologies for not being able to be in the building to interview a second time. I understand after speaking with senior staff who had the opportunity to sit with you, they were very impressed. So if the staff, who I have a lot of respect for in this building, support you, you have my unwavering support. So yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Since everyone's making comment, I'll make a little comment too. The first meeting where we met Ms. Roundtree, One committee member stayed for part of her interview and left. That meeting was scheduled for at least 2 weeks in advance, trying to get our schedules all together. For the second meeting, I'm a doctor, and I can move my schedule around to come to meetings. Other people can come too. So I'm quite upset that 2 township committee members did not come to that interview. I fully support Ms. Roundtree. I think she's a breath of fresh air for this town, and my vote is yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
It is an honor to vote yes for Ms. Roundtree. Please come forward and welcome to our home.
Welcome to the job.
Joe, come on up and just Joe, maybe just tell the audience a little bit about the process, how we select the bid.
Congratulations. Yes, my name is Joseph Hartnett. I'm a longtime retired administrator in New Jersey, presently doing consulting work for a number of municipalities. I think we're doing 4 or 5 right now. And our firm, Government Strategy Group, conducted the recruitment for an administrator for Homedale Township. We had 40-some applicants and an additional number of people that we actively recruited for this position, including Ms. Roundtree, who has an extensive background in municipal management and county management throughout her entire career. So she presently is an administrator in a nearby town. We were able to convince her to come over here to Homedale, and she has found it to be a perfect match also on her side, a wonderful community. Everyone's been very supportive, and we're happy to work with you on this process, and I'm happy to introduce Sharon Roundtree as your new administrator.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking each and every one of you for your support. I am very excited to join the Homedale team. From everybody I've met so far, it seems like a wonderful community. I see a lot of the community members here. I look forward to meeting you in the near future. Can't wait to be on board and join your team.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Maybe one day we have a welcome for our new administrator, the community at the town center. We have coffee and cakes, and the community can come talk to her. So maybe we can arrange that.
Yeah, let us know what we'll talk, and we'll at everybody's convenience, we'll set up a time and day that residents can come speak and meet with you, and we'll get that on the agenda.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so go to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, yes.
Okay, so the consent agenda as proposed before the committee right now includes resolutions 2019-300 to 2019-316B.
I'd like to pull 2019-303 for further discussion.
All right, so it's the consent agenda, all items except 303.
And just pull, Chief, you have the information on the turf field at Phillips? The change order?
I have that.
You have it?
Yeah.
All right, so just pull it just so we have.
Unless you want to talk about it.
No? Go ahead, Chief.
All right, so just pull those two for further discussion. Okay.
Okay, so it's the consent agenda, all items except 303 and 316.
Correct. Move.
Second.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so, Mr. Bontempo, you want the contract for forensic accounting study?
Yes. So at the meeting, the motion was made to hire a third-party independent auditor. The firm that we're hiring is Chief, they're currently doing our auditing, correct?
Correct.
So we're hiring the firm that's auditing to audit us again?
Bob Allison is our current auditor, and he has been, that's who they've selected to do this. I think the terminology is incorrect, forensic, right? It's actually called agreed upon procedures. And what they're going to look at is were our internal procedures followed for any vendor we went into business with.
So I thought the motion was for a third party.
Absolutely correct. So this one needs to be, this is a new motion, I guess, right, Mike? For you guys to vote on.
I'd like to stay with the original motion for a third party. I thought that made a lot of sense.
I'll defer to the attorney. I agree, I understand where you're coming from, so.
Okay, Bill, help me out a little bit. Has our 2018 financial audit been completed?
It's pretty much completed. There's about one or two more things that I have to look at on Friday, but
So yes or no? It has
no,
not,
we do not. It has not been
we
filed.
have not had it yet.
No.
No. Okay. So we don't have our 2018 audit yet. This is an audit of, or a study of inconsistencies in accounting or purchases of this year was the original request to a third party. And my only concern is that we haven't completed 2018, and I don't think.
Well, this is, the agreed upon procedures is not something that the audit would even address. So this is something additional that they're being asked to address for 19, not for 18.
No, I don't think there's any question there were unagreed upon procedures this year, but, okay. All right, so there's, is there a motion to?
Well, can I make a comment too?
Yes, of course.
I have a couple of things with this. One is I don't like people auditing themselves. And number two is I have a question for the professionals because I know not everyone is honest. And that the number of the figure that we're going to have them audit above is 3,499. Where did that come from? Because in my opinion, people that are dishonest put a lot of smaller bills in instead of one large bill. How do we address that?
I think the issue came into the dollar figure. I mean, probably if they looked at every single purchase we did, that could run up to probably $40,000 because you're looking at every item.
So where does
So
this
that
come
isn't this a forensic account? But wouldn't a forensic account? I mean, I know this is not you. This is not you're not the person that we should be asking this to. But in your opinion.
Usually, something like this agreed upon procedures, you're setting a parameter because you do not want to get these bills of $50,000, $60,000 just to look at every invoice because you have some for $20, $30 in there. There's usually they pick a number. The number we picked was just below the amount that has to be approved by the governing body for purchase. That way, they can at least cover the majority of the purchases. And I believe what instituted this whole thing was a very large purchase also.
So do you know how that number came about?
Because 3,500 is when it needs approval of the governing body. So what we decided was anything from 3,500 and up, they would look at 100%.
Okay. And then who decided that it was going to take place over 3.5 months?
Because at that meeting, it was talked about from January 1st until I came in, just when Jeanette and Donna had left. So it was from that period of time.
April 16, 2019?
Yes.
Do we go out to bid at all for this?
No.
For a third? I thought the motion was for a third party independent order.
That's what the motion was for.
Why did we not go out for bid?
We don't have to go for bid. We go for a professional appointment. This was the one that was.
Who selected? How was that selected?
I really can't tell you.
Who's they?
There was a meeting held, I don't think he was even on it, but we talked about using Bob Allison because he's our auditor and we weren't, the terminology that was used that night was forensic audit, and that's not what that was about. So once it was going to be agreed upon procedures, we could use our auditor to do that, was the thought. So again, it's up to vote. If you guys want to vote it down, it's in your purview.
Who?
All right, Mr. Patel.
There has been a motion or a second, so there's there a motion from any member of the committee? If not, it'll fail for lack of a motion.
Okay.
All right. The next item on the consent agenda is Resolution 2019-316. It's change order number 1 for the Phillips Park synthetic turf baseball fields.
All right, so, Chief, we got an updated on there's an increase in costs there. Can you just walk us through that a little bit?
So the initial contract that the town signed with Field Turf allowed for a certain amount of engineering and a certain amount of product or material. Once we went to Freehold Soil for a permit, Freehold Soil didn't agree with what Field Turf wanted to do. We did include Fran in this. He got involved. He agreed with Freehold Soil that they should increase. The engineering itself needed to be increased, as well as the amount of material. Most of the material, the bluestone they were putting down, was anywhere between 4 inches and 6 inches. Freehold Soil didn't like that. Fran thought it should be closer to 12 inches.
Let me just stop you real quick. Fran, why didn't Freehold Soil like that?
Pretty much it's just to comply with their drainage calculation criteria. It's a formula-driven specification where there are minimums that are required by Freehold Soil. So it was really just a matter of bringing...
But if we're increasing the drainage capability, why would they be opposed? I'm just curious.
They were interested in requiring an increase in the amount of bluestone, increase the size of the drainage pipe, etc., to fully comply with the Freehold Soil criteria.
Okay.
So that they basically did not approve the original proposal, and they required upgrades and increases in the thickness of the stone.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Chief. Go ahead.
No, and that's really what this is about. So we due to the additional engineering that Field Turf did not think they would have to deal with, they build fields all over the place. Unfortunately, they haven't met with Freehold Soil that often. We're very strict. So because of the additional engineering they needed, larger pipe they needed, and also more material, more bluestone, to go from 4 inches to I think to 9 or 10 inches, that's what the additional cost is.
I make a motion that we move forward and accept those change orders.
I'll second that.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Cutelli?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to,
I have it as 10. Everyone's agenda is different up here.
Oh, no, that's a new one, Did you know? I printed this out before, yes. I didn't print out this one, you're right. Okay, so 10. Item 10, Somerset Development.
Okay, so we spoke previously at the meeting where an ordinance was introduced with respect to this matter. These are subsequent resolutions, as I mentioned at that point, that are going to be considered by the committee. For those who weren't present at that meeting as background, as you know, the Township of Homedale is in a redevelopment agreement, a financial agreement, and an affordable housing agreement with Somerset for the Bell Works redevelopment project. Bell Works is currently undergoing a refinancing and has petitioned the township for various approvals in order to effectuate that refinancing. This is a fairly routine thing that does occur through redevelopment agreements, and the redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement require the township to work with the redeveloper as part of any refinancing that occurs. So pursuant to those obligations, before the committee tonight is an ordinance which you'll address in just a moment, amending the financial agreement with Somerset. Under this agenda item are 3 resolutions. 2 of them deal with estoppel certificates and subordination. That basically is the township having to provide certain representations to the bank that Somerset is in compliance with the redevelopment agreement, the financial agreement, the affordable housing agreement, in order to provide the bank the certainty they want as part of the refinancing. And the other item is an amendment to the redevelopment agreement. Specifically, the language in that is to allow for the bank to step into the shoes of the redeveloper should there be a bankruptcy. This is technical language that is often in redevelopment agreements to start. It didn't happen to be in this redevelopment agreement, so the parties have discussed the necessary amendment in order for the bank to be comfortable with the redevelopment agreement. The redevelopment agreement also updates the project schedule. There are certain deliverables for Somerset to complete the redevelopment obligations to the township, and the committee discussed in executive session the update that's contained in the resolution attachment, and the proposal would be on this agenda item for the committee to adopt resolutions 2019-317, 2019-318, and 2019-319, and approving it as amended, reflecting our conversation in executive session on two technical items with respect to the project schedule.
I make that motion.
All right, I'll second that motion. So is there a discussion?
I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have. I know this
So
is a
Mr. Collins, just so we're clear, this does not, this opening of the redevelopment plan does not, strictly sticks to the agenda items that are listed here. Is that correct?
That's correct. The public can look at the text of the redevelopment agreement amendment as well as the financial agreement. These are narrowly tailored items to address this refinancing. There are no other aspects that are being addressed as part of these amendments. So in terms of, I know you mentioned the term opening, Deputy Mayor.
Right. So
there's
there's been a lot of, I've received numerous
so
calls from
basically,
residents.
you could obviously amend a contract with both sides signing off on it. This is the township and Somerset signing off on these technical amendments with respect to the refinancing. There are no other considerations at this time.
Fran, so you reviewed this prior to us going to executive session, is that correct?
Yes.
From your perspective, in compliance, meeting all the terms and conditions of the original redevelopment agreement we adopted some years ago?
That's correct. There's no lessening or relaxing of any of the site plan requirements or anything of that nature.
Thank you.
So that just so we're clear, that Mike, this is not including additional housing. This is nothing with any other additional buildings on the property. This sticks to just these items. Is that correct?
That's correct, Deputy Mayor. The text of the resolution and the text of the amendments themselves make it very clear that these are technical amendments addressing the refinancing. And so if there's any concern that you're stating, that is not accurate.
Okay.
Councilor, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So in your legal opinion, we're fairly well covered with all these different entities now that are going to be involved?
That's a question that I would prefer to answer in executive session, but we can speak to the resolutions before the committee right now.
And you're comfortable with it?
They're on the agenda.
The legal answer.
All right. So
Roll call.
yeah.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols?
Yes. All right. Next, we have the introduction of ordinances. Wendy?
Introduction of ordinance 2019-29 is bond ordinance to amend sections 4 and 10 of the bond ordinance number 2019-09 entitled Bond Ordinance to authorize the making of various public improvements and the acquisition of new technology and telecommunications equipment, new communication and signal systems equipment, and new automotive vehicles, including original apparatus and equipment in by and for the Township of Homedale and the County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $9,130,000 to pay costs thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. Adopted on August 13, 2019 in Homedale Township. Motion to adopt on first reading, published in the Asbury Park Press, and set for public hearing on Tuesday, November 12, 2019.
Move. Is there a motion?
I like the motion.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Cutelli?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Okay. Hearings, ordinances, right?
Yep. Now we have a hearing on ordinance 2019-28, which is the ordinance approving the First Amendment of Financial Agreement with Somerset Homedale Development 1 Urban Renewal LP.
Okay. And there's, this ordinance is open for public comment at this time. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this ordinance, please do now. Yes, Ralph?
Hello, Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. There were some 30 or 40 pages of attachments in the agenda related to the Somerset item.
We can't hear you, Ralph.
Mike.
You get some work. There were some 30 or 40 pages of attachments in the agenda related to this item. A lot of it did look to me like what I call legalese, boilerplate. Maybe if we had fewer lawyers, it could be done in 5 pages instead of...
I won't disagree at all on this one, and I don't think Mr. Bruno will either.
One item that did not look like boilerplate, there was one, unfortunately, a lot of it also, I think, would have been far more intelligible if it had done with change mark, so one had better indication of what was changing. Nothing was change mark. That leads me to one question, and I'm not sure which piece this falls under. The schedule. There was one page of schedule items starting with some sidewalk piece with new dates. It didn't give what the old dates are. What is leading to the schedule changes, and what is the impact on the site plan?
So what I will say is that the project schedule that's attached includes the items that are remaining. As part of consulting with the township engineer, there were conversations with the committee to make sure that the timelines that remain in there, Somerset becomes current on, and to ensure that the time frame is acceptable to the township in terms of getting these improvements completed. Back and forth on schedules is relatively routine in the redevelopment setting. It hasn't been formally done by amendment to the agreement, but in this case, since we're already doing it, we would do this as part of it, and it also needs to be up to date as part of the estoppel. So I would defer to the township engineer on any specific items you may have, but what I can tell you is that the project schedule now will only include the items that still remain outstanding. All the other items that have been completed were taken out of the schedule. The previous project list on the redevelopment agreement was substantially longer than the one-pager you see now.
No. Now, I know the whole original plan had a lot of things being phased. For example, they only had to fix up parking lot A, B, or C as the building got occupied. The implication is that with the completion of the items on this list, all of the parking lots will have been completely fixed, for example?
So on that point, the committee made it a point in speaking with Somerset that they wanted to remove all the phases, so there were no longer any square footage milestones, occupancy considerations, so that it's just a strict date. Everyone knows when things need to be done, and Somerset has agreed to that approach, which is reflected in the amendment.
Well, in that case, what happens to the dates that did exist with regard to affordable housing?
The affordable housing agreement speaks for itself. That's not affected by the project schedule. That's a separate agreement that was executed between the township and Somerset, and it contains its relevant considerations in there. And Somerset is still 100% responsible for its obligations under that agreement. That's not being altered in any way by any of the actions that have been taken tonight.
So without remembering all the items that were on that one page, but didn't make reference to, for example, the parking lot paving, the landscaping, so all of that will be completed then for the entire property in the next year or two, depending on the specific item. Because there were mostly dates in 2019, but there was 1 or 2 dates, you have the document here, that went out to 2020. Yeah, the parking lots are going to 2020.
The amendment I mentioned is based upon working with Somerset. The township committee's agreeing to having the parking lot start in the middle of 2021 with completion at the end of 2021. That was what, that's not, if you listen, Ralph, when we introduced, first off, we're talking about the redevelopment agreement amendment, not I just want, so we're talking about amendments to the redevelopment agreement. This is a public hearing on the ordinance, which is the financial agreement. I'm not going to shut you down. We're just going to, but I just want to caution you that we're talking about something that's separate. But the, with respect to the paving, the committee agrees to allow Somerset to complete that during calendar year 2021. And if you also look at the agreement, it's a bonded improvement, so they will need to post a performance bond in the interim until that's completed.
The version that Fran has here says 2020.
I'm aware. So if you recall, we introduced it subject to amendment based upon the discussions in executive session.
Okay, thank you for the explanation and clarification.
Anytime.
Any other comments? Yes, sorry. Back.
It's clear as mud.
Jerry Buffalino, 20 Barbera Drive, Homedale. Mike, are we permitted to ask anything about the redevelopment agreement and pursuant to the agreements you're asking that we sign tonight?
I think we're, well, I mean, you can ask anything you want, but I think the